The envelope sat heavy in my hands, the kind of weight that has nothing to do with paper and everything to do with endings. The afternoon sun slanted across the driveway, too cheerful for the moment. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower droned on, oblivious. Normal life continuing while mine fractured. I already knew what the papers said before I opened them. Susan had been distant for months, but I'd chalked it up to stress, to the natural ebb and flow of 22 years together. I was wrong. The legal jargon blurred before my eyes, but one phrase stood out starkly: sole physical custody. The house echoed when I stepped inside. No backpack tossed by the door where Emily always left it. No baseball glove on the kitchen counter where Jake would forget it. Just silence, thick and suffocating. I walked through each room like a ghost. The calendar in the kitchen still had Sarah's neat handwriting marking the kids' activities. Ballet on Tuesdays, Little League on Fridays, all those empty squares stretching into the future. The refrigerator hummed loudly in the quiet. I opened it from habit more than hunger. The shelves were nearly bare, just a half-empty milk carton and some leftover Chinese takeout. Susan must have cleaned out the kitchen when she took the children. The realization hit like a physical blow. She'd been planning this for weeks. Upstairs, Jake's bedroom door stood ajar. His bed was neatly made, which told me everything. My son never made his bed unless forced. The dinosaur posters still clung to the walls, but the desk was cleared of his usual chaos of homework and action figures. I sat on the edge of his bed, running my hand over the Star Wars comforter we'd picked out together last summer. A faint scent of boyhood lingered, sweat and grass, and the cheap cologne he'd started wearing to impress girls. Emily's room was worse. Her stuffed animals sat in a forlorn row on the shelf, abandoned in the hasty departure. The purple walls we'd painted together last spring seemed to mock me with their cheerfulness. On her dresser, a single hair tie lay forgotten. The master bedroom was stripped of Susan's presence. No trace of her vanilla perfume in the air, her side of the closet gaping empty. She'd left my wedding ring on the nightstand, a final punctuation mark. I found myself standing in the doorway of the garage, staring at the marks on the wall where we'd measured the kids' growth each birthday. Jake had finally passed me last month, his lanky frame shooting up overnight. Emily had been so proud of reaching 5 feet. The phone rang, startling me. For one wild moment, I thought it might be Susan, calling to say it was all a mistake. "Mr. Thompson, this is Principal Wilkins from Jefferson Middle School. We noticed Emily hasn't been in class this week." I closed my eyes. She won't be coming back. The silence stretched before he responded. "I see. We'll process the records transfer then." Night fell as I sat at the kitchen table, the divorce papers spread before me. The legal language blurred as my eyes burned. Somewhere in another town, my children were sleeping in unfamiliar beds, believing God knows what about why their father wasn't there. The moon cast long shadows across the linoleum. Somewhere in the house, a pipe groaned. The familiar sounds of home now felt alien, hollowed out. I reached for the phone again, then stopped. What would I say? That I didn't see this coming? That I'd failed to protect them? That some part of me had known things weren't right but kept hoping, kept pretending? The truth settled over me like a weight. This wasn't just an ending. It was the collapse of everything I thought my life was. And in the wreckage, I had to find a way to still be their father. Outside, a car passed by, its headlights sweeping across the living room wall. For a brief moment, the shadows of the empty house flickered and danced. Then darkness returned, complete and absolute. The courthouse steps were colder than I remembered. February wind cut through my jacket as I climbed them, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the air smelled of industrial cleaner and old coffee, the scent of lost causes. My lawyer, Paul, met me by the metal detectors. His tie was too tight, his smile too practiced. "We've got a good shot today, Robert," he said, clapping my shoulder. "Judge Henderson doesn't tolerate parental alienation." I nodded, but the words rang hollow. 6 months of good shots had gotten me exactly 3 supervised visits with my daughters. The courtroom was all polished wood and echoing footsteps. Susan sat at the opposite table, her new lawyer whispering in her ear. She wore that navy dress I'd always liked, the one she'd worn to Lily's first piano recital. The bailiff called the case. Thompson versus Thompson. Judge Henderson peered over his glasses as Susan's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client has grave concerns about Mr. Thompson's instability. His repeated attempts to— Objection, Paul interrupted. No evidence supports these claims. The judge sighed. Mr. Ellis, let's hear specifics. Ellis produced a folder. Text messages showing harassment. School records proving he appeared unannounced during lunch periods. My stomach dropped. Those harassing texts were me asking about Lily's asthma medication. The school visits? The only time Susan's lawyer allowed me to see them. Paul leaned close. They're painting you as obsessive? The gavel cracked. I'm granting the mother's request to suspend visitation pending psychological evaluation. The words blurred together. Evaluation. Supervised calls. More delays. Outside, rain streaked the courthouse windows. Susan brushed past me, her perfume, the same scent she'd worn since college, hanging in the air. Susan, I choked out. Please, they're my girls too. She didn't slow down. You should have thought of that before you— She stopped herself, adjusting her purse strap. The court will decide what's best. I stood there long after her heels clicked away, watching rain pool in the grooves of the steps. Paul's voice buzzed in my ear about appeals, about strategies. That night, I spread the court documents across my kitchen table, page after page of my life reduced to exhibits and allegations. The microwave clock read 1:17 a.m. when I finally saw it, buried in Susan's affidavit. Respondent frequently prioritized work over family, missing key events. My hands shook. She'd listed dates. Lily's 9th birthday party. The afternoon Mia broke her arm. The days I'd missed because Susan had insisted we needed the overtime pay. The realization hit like a fist. She'd been keeping score all along. I stared at the darkened backyard where we'd hung a tire swing that now sat motionless. The legal battle wasn't about protecting the girls. It was about punishment. And suddenly I understood. The only way out of this maze wasn't through more arguments, but through the one truth Susan couldn't twist. Showing up. Every game. Every recital. Every court-mandated parenting class. Not to win her over, but to prove, beyond any legal doubt, who their father really was. The first birthday card came back unopened. I held the envelope in my hands. The red return to sender stamp smeared like a wound across Emily's name. The sticker where the post office had scribbled "no longer at this address" felt like a verdict. I dialed Susan's number, the 5th time that week. It went straight to voicemail, just like always. Susan, please, I said to the recording. Just tell me if they got my letters. Just tell me they're okay. The silence that followed was louder than any words. Thanksgiving came and went. I cooked a turkey breast anyway, the small one Emily used to call the baby turkey, and set 3 places at the table out of habit. The empty chairs stared back at me. In December, I drove past their new school. Snowflakes dusted the windshield as I waited across the street, heater humming. When the bell rang, I spotted them immediately. Lily in her puffy pink coat, Jake trailing behind with his untied shoelaces. My fingers twitched toward the door handle. A teacher eyed my idling car. I drove away. Valentine's Day. I left chocolates at Susan's doorstep. The heart-shaped box Lily had loved since she was 6. Through the front window, I saw the curtains twitch. The box sat there for 3 days until the rain reduced it to a soggy pulp. Spring brought Little League season. I sat in my car behind the outfield fence, watching Jake's first game through binoculars. When he hit a double, my hands clapped automatically, then froze when I realized no one around me was cheering. One humid June night, the phone finally rang. Dad? Lily's voice was smaller than I remembered. My heart stopped. Sweetheart? Are you— The line went dead. I called back 17 times. On the 18th try, Susan answered, Stop harassing us, Robert. Lily just called me. Put her back on— That was a misdial. She meant to call her grandmother. The lie burned. Susan, for God's sake. Click. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the caller ID, private number. The digital clock read 2:18 a.m. when I finally understood. The silence wasn't just punishment, it was erasure, a slow, meticulous undoing of my place in their lives. The next morning, I drove to the county records office. The clerk handed me a form. Petition to enforce visitation rights? I filled it out right there at the counter, my handwriting jagged with something between hope and rage. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. A notification from Jake's school portal I'd somehow retained access to. His math grade had dropped to a D. Below the grade, a teacher's note. Jake seems distracted. When asked, he says he's waiting for a phone call. The sunlight caught the silver of my keychain, the one Jake had made me at summer camp years ago. The beads now faded. In that moment, the silence broke. Not with sound, but with clarity. They were waiting too. I started the car. The legal papers sat heavy on the passenger seat. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what to do. The bottle of whiskey sat half empty on the kitchen counter, glowing amber in the late afternoon light. I wasn't a drinking man. Not really, but 3 years of court dates, missed birthdays, and returned letters had worn me down to something raw and unrecognizable. The phone rang. My sister, Karen. Again. "Rob, you can't keep doing this to yourself," she said when I finally picked up. Doing what? Breathing? You know what I mean, sitting in that house like a ghost. When was the last time you... I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter. I wasn't fine. The mirror showed a stranger, gray, creeping into my beard, eyes hollowed out by sleepless nights. I ended the call and stared at the stack of unopened legal mail on the table. Another motion from Susan's attorney. Another bill from mine. Another hearing date that would change nothing. The backyard swing set swayed in the wind, its chains creaking a lonely rhythm. I could still hear the echoes of Emily's laughter there, could still see Jake pumping his legs, begging me to push him higher. Now the only visitors were fallen leaves and the occasional squirrel. My lawyer's words from last week played on a loop in my head. At some point, Robert, you need to consider moving on. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was it, the breaking point, the moment I finally accepted that I'd lost them. I reached for the framed photo on the bookshelf, our last family vacation to Lake Geneva. Susan smiling in her sunglasses. The kids squinting against the sun. Me with an arm around each of them, never imagining that would be the last time. The glass cracked as I threw it against the wall. Shards glittered on the hardwood like cruel stars. I sank to my knees, the weight of it all crushing me into the floor. 3 years. 3 years of fighting. 3 years of hoping. For what? Then, a sound. My phone buzzed with a notification. A school alert from Jefferson Middle. Jake's name flashed on the screen. Absent today. Unexcused. That wasn't like him. Jake loved school. I called the office. "This is Robert Thompson, Jake's father. Is everything—" "Mr. Thompson," the secretary interrupted. "You're not listed as a contact." "But School policy." The dial tone hummed in my ear. I drove there anyway. The security guard blocked my path at the entrance. "Sorry, sir. Without clearance. Just tell me if my son is okay." He hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Kid got in a fight. Went home early." Ice flooded my veins. Jake never fought. Back in the car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. The legal papers, the court orders, the endless rules. None of it mattered right then. Only one thing did. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. For the first time in years, I knew exactly where I was going. The courtroom air smelled of lemon polish and stale coffee, just as it had all those other times. But today was different. Today, I wasn't just fighting for visitation rights or phone calls. Today, I was fighting for the truth. Susan sat across the aisle, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. She wore the pearl necklace I'd given her on our 15th anniversary, a weapon disguised as jewelry. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Thompson, you're requesting a modification to the custody agreement?" I stood, my knees protesting. Your Honor, I'm requesting what any father would, the chance to be part of my children's lives without conditions. Susan's lawyer stood abruptly. Your Honor, my client has documented. Not now, counselor, the judge said, turning back to me. Continue. I pulled the folded paper from my pocket, its edges soft from handling. This is Jake's report card from last semester, all A's and B's, except one D in math. My voice cracked. The teacher wrote he's been distracted, that he's waiting for a phone call. Susan's chair scraped. That's taken out of context. The judge held up a hand. From whom was he waiting for a call, Mr. Thompson? I met Susan's glare. From me. The calls Your Honor ordered every Wednesday at 7, the ones my ex-wife claims I never made. The room stilled. Even the court reporter's fingers paused. Susan's lawyer started objecting, but the judge silenced him with a look. Mrs. Thompson, would you care to explain the call logs from your phone? Susan's face went pale. I didn't need to see the records to know what they'd show. All my attempted calls, unanswered. The truth finally laid bare. When the judge spoke again, his voice was softer. Mr. Thompson, what is it you want? I looked at my hands, rough from years of work, of waiting, of hoping. Just to be their father again. However that looks. The gavel fell with a sound like a door unlocking. Outside, autumn leaves swirled across the courthouse steps. Susan brushed past me, her perfume suddenly overwhelming. You'll regret this, she hissed. I watched her walk away, the click of her heels fading. For the first time in years, the weight on my chest lifted slightly. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped fighting the wrong battle. The real reckoning hadn't been in that courtroom. It had been in choosing truth over victory, fatherhood over pride. And as I walked to my car, I realized the calls would come now. Not because a judge ordered it, but because the truth always finds its way home. The first Sunday visit felt like walking on shattered glass. I'd spent hours cleaning the house, buying the cereal Jake liked, setting out the old photo albums, as if familiar things could bridge 3 years of silence. When my car pulled up, Emily stared straight ahead, her fingers gripping the seatbelt. Jake, taller now than I remembered, studied his shoes. Hungry? I asked. Too loud. I got those cinnamon rolls you used to. We ate already, Emily said. The drive home was all quiet except for the radio playing songs none of us knew. At the house, Jake paused in the doorway. You got rid of the couch. Yeah, I said, the old plaid one where we'd built pillow forts. Spring cleaning. He nodded like he understood more than I'd said. We sat around the kitchen table, 3 strangers sharing DNA. I pushed the photo album toward them. Remember Disneyland? Emily barely glanced at the picture. I remember Mom crying when we got back. The words hit like a fist. I closed the album. Later, washing dishes, I heard muffled voices upstairs. Peeking into the hallway, I saw them in their old rooms. Jake running his hand along the bookshelf, Emily sitting on her bed staring at the sticker stars we'd put on her ceiling years ago. At bedtime, Jake hesitated outside the bathroom. You still keep the extra toothbrushes in the same place. Something in his voice, not anger, but surprise, made my throat tighten. Some habits stick, I managed. The next morning, making pancakes, I burned the first batch. Emily surprised me by taking the spatula. You always cook them too hot. As she flipped them perfectly, I saw it. The faintest echo of the little girl who used to stand on a chair to help me cook. When it was time to take them back, Jake lingered by the car. Maybe next time we could get pizza? It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even a beginning. But as I watched them walk away, I realized rebuilding wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about finding what remained. That night, I found the photo album open on the coffee table. To the last page where someone had slipped in a new picture. Jake's school photo from this year. No note. Just his face, looking so much like mine. I traced the edges with my thumb, understanding for the first time that some fractures never fully heal, They just become part of who you are. The college acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday. I recognized Jake's handwriting on the envelope before I even opened it. University of Michigan, 5 hours away. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the paper, the official seal gleaming under the kitchen light. Susan had emailed me the news weeks earlier, her message clinical and detached. Jake got into Michigan. He'll need your financial documents for the loan application. No mention that this was the school we'd promised to visit together, when he was still small enough to ride on my shoulders. I dialed his number, the one I'd programmed into my phone 3 years ago, but still hesitated to use. Dad? His voice was deeper now, but the hesitation was the same. Congratulations, son. Michigan's lucky to have you. A pause. Then quietly, thanks. I wasn't sure you'd remember. Remember? The campus map still sat folded in my glove compartment from when we talked about making the trip. I swallowed hard. Of course I remember. The silence stretched between us, filled with all the unsaid things, the missed birthdays, the awkward visits, the way he still called me Dad but sometimes flinched when he said it. Mom's helping me pack, he finally said. I stared at the refrigerator still covered in Emily's childhood drawings, now yellowed at the edges. Do you need anything? Sheets or... I'm good. Another pause. But maybe you could drive up sometime. Show me that diner you always talked about. The lump in my throat made it hard to breathe. In that moment, I saw the truth with painful clarity. This war between his mother and me would never truly end. There would always be court dates and missed holidays and whispered accusations. But as Jake's quiet hope traveled through the phone line, I realized something else. Our battle wasn't about winning anymore. It was about showing up, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. I'll be there, I promised. First weekend you're free. When we hung up, I walked to the garage and dug out the old Michigan sweatshirt from my college days. The fabric smelled of mothballs and memories. I folded it carefully, placed it in a box with a note. For the cold nights. Love, Dad. The next morning, I dropped it at the post office. The clerk asked if I wanted tracking. I shook my head. Some things you just have to send out into the world and trust they'll arrive where they're needed. The war wasn't over, but maybe, just maybe, we'd finally stopped fighting the wrong battles.